and welcome to the online modules for co-teaching for administrators for Durham Public Schools. A special thanks to these individuals from the Department of Public Instruction who worked to create these materials for local school districts. Let's begin with the purpose. The purpose of these modules is to provide school administrators with just an overview of the practice of co-teaching, as well as some tools that will help them support both their general education and special education teachers who are implementing co-teaching in their classrooms. We're going to be using these modules from DPI, and these are some of the things that walk through them. You'll notice as we go through the online modules, there will be some slides that I just go ahead and advance through, and that's because we're using an online format. I will be sending the PowerPoint in a separate slide, so if there's something you want to go back to and pay a little bit closer attention to, you'll be more than welcome to do that. This is an example of something I'm going to skip through. These are two sales pitches, one from the view of an administrator and one from the view of two co-teachers. The videos are about 5 minutes long each, so you can feel free to watch that during your own time or a different time separate from this module. So think about this as we move on to the next few questions. Think about what form co-teaching currently takes in your school and what you would like it to look like in your school. And then let's evaluate your current knowledge of co-teaching before we get started. Think about this. Who is involved in a co-teaching relationship? Is it A, two special education teachers, B, two general education teachers, or C, one special education and one general education teacher? If you pick C, you are correct. Think about this. What's the primary role of the special education teacher in a co-teaching relationship? Is it A, to provide specific content knowledge to exceptional children, B, to provide strategies to help all the students learn in the classroom, or C, to ensure that students are behaving in a class? If you pick B, you are correct. Define the following form of co-teaching. Think about this. When each teacher takes half the class to reduce student-teacher ratio, groups may be doing the same content in the same way, or the same content in a different way, or different content. Is that team teaching, parallel teaching, or station teaching? If you guess B, parallel teaching, you are correct. What about when students are divided into 3 or more small heterogeneous groups to go into stations? Students rotate through multiple stations and teachers facilitate individual stations or circulate among the stations. Is that team teaching, parallel teaching, or station teaching? You may have to use some key words. If you pick station teaching, you're correct. True or false? Relationships are a key component to the success of a co-taught classroom. A. True. Now that we've evaluated our current understanding of co-teaching, let's move on to the next section. Let's talk about the difference between co-teaching and inclusion. Oftentimes, these terms are used interchangeably. However, the definition of co-teaching is a service delivery option for providing special education or related services to students with disabilities or other special needs students while they remain in their general education classrooms. Co-teaching occurs when, and here are some key words, 2 or more professionals jointly deliver substantive instruction to a diverse blended group of students in a single physical space. Inclusion, on the other hand, is simply a philosophy in which all students, regardless of disability, are in the same classroom. Therefore, as we move toward more inclusive classrooms, one approach to meet the needs of all students within that classroom is to provide the co-teaching model of instruction. One way to think about that within Durham Public Schools is a lot of times our English classrooms and our math classrooms have 2 teachers teaching side by side. That's an EC teacher and a general education teacher. And you have both students with disabilities and non-disabled students in that classroom. However, within a science classroom or a social studies classroom, you may only have one general education teacher, but you have both students with disabilities as well as non-disabled students in that classroom. The first example is an example of a co-taught classroom, and the second example is an example of inclusion. Let's talk about what co-teaching is and what it is not. When we talk about 2 or more professionals in a classroom, it is 2 credentialed professionals. The general education provides the instructional framework. What it's not is a teacher and a classroom volunteer or a paraprofessional or instructional assistant. When we say they're jointly delivering substantive instruction, we're saying that both teachers have an active role and that instructional strategies engage all of the students within the classroom. Whereas what it's not is when two adults are merely just present in a classroom, and when the general education teacher plans and delivers all of the instruction, and it's not simply just taking turns every once in a while with lecturing, swapping in and out. When we define a diverse and blended group of students, we're talking about teachers responding effectively to diverse needs. It's a way to lower the student-to-teacher ratio, which sometimes we found that because there are two teachers in a classroom, some individuals are under the impression that they can increase the number of students in that classroom. Therefore, it really doesn't lower the ratio of student to teacher. And also, it is the expansion of professional expertise that can be applied to student need. What it's not is separating or grouping students with special needs into one part of the classroom. So we don't ever really want to see that. When you talk about sharing a classroom space, we're talking about co-teachers that are instructing in the same physical space. We're not talking about teaching teams that plan together and then group and instruct the students in separate classrooms. That would be more of a resource model or pull-out model. We are going to take a look at these quick videos because they are just about a minute long. So let's look and see which ones are examples of co-teaching and which are not.
Are you going to do Task Thursday? No. Oh, okay. She sits down. Yes, I will. Let me put it up here, and we'll talk about it. First of all, this is called the Animal Olympics. Wait, I want to This is going to be talking about, it says the Animal Olympics is coming up this summer, and one of the events is tree felling. So we need to talk about tree felling before we even start. Does anybody know what that means? Tree felling. Whoever has the best tree. Oh, somebody who has the best tree in the neighborhood? Well, maybe. But no, not quite. Anybody know? I can't believe they don't know what tree felling is. I know. I mean, tree felling, come on.
Okay, I think you've seen enough of that video. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, so obviously the first one is not an example and the second one is an example. All right, so let's talk about the roles and responsibilities of the gen ed teacher. One, they are to ensure joint responsibility. When we talk about parity, that means two teachers who have equal roles and responsibilities within the classroom. The gen ed teacher should bring specialized content knowledge and skill, and they should also combine their knowledge with the special education teacher's knowledge and also collaborate. When we look at the special education teacher's roles and responsibilities, we really want them to be able to identify the learning needs and adapt the curriculum to meet the needs of all learners. We want them to provide access, such as UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and ensure the use of evidence-based practices. And again, you'll see that same word again up here, which is parity, that joint responsibility within the classroom. When we talk about roles and responsibilities of administrators, it looks a little bit different. We need our administrators just to know what co-teaching is and when it's needed and when it's appropriate. We need our administrators to really act as a matchmaker to make sure that we're pairing up appropriate co-teaching pairs. Scheduling, we've talked about a number of times. It is so critical to prioritize scheduling, especially for our students with disabilities, and maximizing the impact of our co-teaching model within our schools. And also to facilitate common planning, which is often difficult when you have multiple teachers teaching multiple grade levels and subject areas. But it is very important that those two co-teachers have time to plan together. We also need principals to monitor, which is why we're providing these online modules, just to give a foundational knowledge of what co-teaching is and how they can better monitor and support it within their schools. So let's play a little game. Who brings specific content knowledge to the classroom? If you guessed the general education teacher, you're correct. Who's responsible for the education of all students in the classroom? If you guessed the gen ed and the special ed and the administrator, you're correct. That was a trick question. Who's the matchmaker? You are. Who brings the knowledge of how to adapt the instruction in order to provide access for students with disabilities in the curriculum? Ultimately, it is the special educator's responsibility. However, general educators bring so much to the table when it comes to this. Who's responsible for assessing students and differentiating lesson plans? Both teachers are. So we're going to move on to Unit 2 for Module 2. I'm going to go ahead and end this session. Please take a look at Module 2 when you have time.